Hey guys, Jean Thirion from SSW, and I'm here at NDC Sydney 2024. I'm here with Espen, or Dr. Circuit.
Yeah.
Espen, why don't you start with just explaining a little bit on who you are and what you've done?
Yeah, so my name is Espen. I am a developer from Norway, and I work as a research fellow at a bank. And I've done a talk about crazy projects in JavaScript.
I've seen the talk, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And where does that Dr. Circuit come from?
Well, I used to be part of the demo scene back in the 80s and 90s, and that's kind of, you had to have these funny handles.
Right.
And you get the doctor the first time you get a demo in the top 5. Oh. That's kind of this...
Okay. Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, so you are 100th member of the demo scene.
Of the early
right.
career in Norway.
So I did attend your talk a little bit earlier, and you were demonstrating some pretty crazy 3D stuff that you've done in JavaScript, playing JavaScript in the browser. I strongly recommend you to watch this talk. It's amazing. And what struck me is that you mentioned that you didn't have any academics, you didn't do any trainings. You left school at 16, I think, got expelled. Yeah. I'm maybe not allowed to say that.
Well, I got kicked out.
And so what strikes me is that in your art, because really it is an art of trying to push the boundaries of everything, you are utilizing some pretty advanced mathematic objects, right?
Yeah.
So how do you find the lack of academics in that sense? Because it must be hard for you to learn this stuff by yourself.
Yeah, it is frightfully hard because when I dive into these concepts, such as like 3D manipulation uses matrices and vectors and stuff, that's pretty gnarly mathematics that you have to understand. And when you try to read the literature, they have these like crazy expressions in mathematical notations that I know nothing about. So, but that also is kind of the enticing bit, because that means that there's so much more for me to discover and learn. Once you understand something that is complex and difficult and it makes sense in your brain, I kind of get this like dopamine rush where I feel like I'm the most amazing person ever because I understood this thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess it's kind of the same with programming problems. Again, during your talk, you talked a little bit about JavaScript scoping, which can be quite not complicated, but counterintuitive for the people that don't know. So I guess it's the same thing, right? Because you didn't have those learnings. Maybe it didn't exist at the time, but you didn't learn it properly, so to speak.
Yeah.
That must have been a challenge.
Yeah, it has always been a challenge, because when I had started working as a programmer, everybody else, they had learned how to program through some kind of book and a university. They followed the guidelines and the principles, but I came straight out of the demo scene where you can commit every programming crime known to man in order to get something.
You even push to do that, right?
Yeah, you push to do that. So every instruction you can save off, every bit of performance you want, that is something. So I learned to program on a deep fundamental level, on a very low level close to the machine. So I learned how the architectures work and stuff like that. And when you then start doing high level programming in the enterprise world, a lot of stuff didn't make sense, and that was a challenge because I had to wrap my head around all these abstractions that people were using and stuff like that.
So how did you fare in the enterprise world? Because that's quite different, right?
I fared pretty good because I always had this. I had this like strange confidence because I thought I was really good at programming, and I probably was pretty decent at programming. But in my brain, I was awesome. So whenever I applied for a job and they asked me, "Do you know Java or do you know this enterprise framework?" I would say, "Sure, I know that thing." I did
inside out, yeah.
But I didn't know a thing about it. But I knew I could fake it for about 3 to 4 weeks.
Enough to get through the recruitment. Yeah.
And I knew the lingo, and I knew that in this world you can get by just doing the minimal effort in the start. And then I would start to make waves when I started to figure out how these things work, and I actually could apply my skills to it.
Yeah.
And then I started progressing up the ladder and get better and better jobs and better positions. Yeah.
When you say better positions, I mean more responsibilities type thing?
Responsibilities. I eventually got to be a team lead and architect and stuff like that, and work on different kinds of things. And just jumping around from these kinds of challenges and just accepting them and always saying yes has given me a lot of different skills that I can use to this day.
It is crazy because I don't I mean, you're a very creative mind. You are very free, like free spirit. If you, again, really strongly encourage you to watch his talk on things that you can't do in JavaScript. And he'll probably tell you about his application to his current job, writing something on an egg. I don't want to spoil it. It's pretty crazy. So such a free mind applied as a team lead or an architect, it's kind of weird to me because they don't seem to bridge. Those two things seem to be quite contradictory. Either, thinking differently and being very enterprise friendly, very, streamlined. So how do you line those two things?
I think because I'm so free and I don't adhere to any principles that anybody else constrains you to, that makes me challenge stuff. And when you are like a challenger, that kind of makes you get noticed. And if that is coupled with results that are good, to me it's been beneficial at least.
So there is space in the enterprise world for creativity and pushing boundaries.
So I have one example because when COVID hit, the Norwegian government closed everything down, as did the whole world did, and suddenly they realized that, well, if we close everything down, businesses will go out of business because they are not making money.
Yeah.
Of course. And they thought that, well, we have to figure something out. So they decided that we will allocate a bunch of billions that we will give out as aid.
Yep.
But how on earth do we figure out who gets aid, how much aid will they get, and how can we get that out fast? Because people are going bankrupt now. Mm-hmm. So they asked around the IT world, can anybody build a solution for this? And everybody said, no, it can't be done. It will take a year or two. It's not something we can do in some weeks. And things were really it was pretty dire because the economic situation escalated every day.
Yeah.
Progressively worse. So eventually they asked the finance trade in Norway, anybody of you can figure this out? And of course everybody said no, it's too risky, too much work, it can't be done. And but the CEO of my bank, she said, wait a minute, I have this group of crazy people.
So they got you to work on that?
Yeah, maybe ask them. And I was on an airplane back from San Francisco because
you personally worked on it?
Yeah.
On that solution.
So my
wow.
On the airplane, my boss hit me up on Slack and said, "Can you build this thing?" And I said, "Sure." To me, it sounded like.
Okay.
Yeah, it sounded like to me it sounded like, well, you have some businesses that go online, they put in something. That's a web form. It's easy. Submit, and we send them some money. It should be easy. And he said, "How long do you think?" I said, 3 weeks. That should be enough time. That's heaps of time.
Yeah.
And then they called me up, how many people do you want on your team? And then I said, 10 should be enough. And we formed up a team. They said yes. And we worked day and night for 2.5 weeks because when this was presented at the press conference, the Ministry of Finance, he said, I'm not going to say how long we're going to use this project, but we're going to use 2 weeks. So we misspoke and we had to deliver it in 2 weeks.
Oh my God.
Weeks. But it went online. It was super secure. It delivered aid to the businesses in 24 hours. It took 24 hours from their application till the money was in their bank account. And it saved multiple businesses from going bankrupt. You personally had a real impact on the economy of the entire country. Yeah. So my team did, not just me.
Yeah, of course, but I mean, you globally. That is a crazy story that you just dropped in the middle of a conversation. That's insane.
And it actually got also some professors wrote the thesis on it, and it's now actually part of the innovation textbooks in Norway.
Wow, so, that is cool. That is very cool. So it sounds like a pretty dream job that you've got, but I'll come back to that.
Yeah.
Before that, I want to ask you a question. Have you ever said no to anything? Like to a project? To things, I guess, yes, but to a project, to a constraint?
No. I hate saying no.
Can you even imagine something you'd say no to? No, really?
No.
That's great.
Yeah, but if it's something super illegal or super immoral, I'll probably say.
Immoral. So morality is really just your boundary. Yeah. Ethics, right?
I have this main rule in my head that you should aim to be as nice as possible, as polite as possible. You should never hurt anybody else. But other than that, you can do whatever you want.
That is a great way of thinking. So back on your dream job, so you work for a bank.
Yeah.
Right. So if I think of a work at a bank, I don't imagine that being joyful, or playful, or, any creative. Tell me about your job, because I know, but I want you to explain what you do, because that's crazy.
So yes, that is true for most jobs in a bank, but I don't know nothing about finance and nothing about banking, but I know a lot about technology. And I work in this R&D department, and our task is basically to figure out what finance could be in like 10 or 20 years time, and how will new technology impact finance in some way or form. Which means that we get to play with all new technologies, and we get to just figure out crazy things to do, crazy projects. And I usually get everything approved every time I have an idea. So I've built a bank on blockchain. I've tried to break encryption with quantum computers. We actually have a research grant doing that together with a bunch of industry people and the University of Norway, where I work in quantum computing, which is kind of strange with no academic background.
That must be quite hard because
but again, it's fun because I get to learn so much stuff, and I get to geek out with quantum physics.
Are you actually learning quantum physics right now?
Yeah.
That is awesome.
And I get to play with professors in quantum physics and learning, and that's pretty cool. And lately I've been training generative AI models to do naughty stuff because the generative AI hit the world like a sledgehammer last year. And suddenly it was like I was tasked with, can we make AI break the law? And most of these models have like trained boundaries and guidelines. If you ask ChatGPT is something illegal, it will say, I'm just a chatbot, you can't...
I can't do that for you,
So I've been now retraining publicly available models to train out those guidelines, and I have some pretty decent models that can do some pretty naughty stuff. For instance, if I ask one of my chat models, how do you kill your neighbor, it will gladly give you a recipe on how to get away with this as well. So
definitely don't let that go out in public. So obviously, we're going to talk about AI a little bit because that's the trend, right? That's the modern thing. 2 questions for you on AI. First, did you guys consider LLMs and AI in general before GPT, basically before ChatGPT, as a future for the bank?
Yeah, we actually used it long before ChatGPT was a product.
Right.
That was one of my first projects in DNB, was can we make a more human-like chatbot, because they use these rule-based chatbots that are horrible. And we actually used one of the earliest GPT that was publicly available up until they removed the public access, to kind of see if we can train it on Norwegian and get it to be like a human. So that was fun.
Okay, well, that I kind of expected it because you do R&D, right? So you're definitely not just following the trend. You're supposed to see the trend coming. So that's definitely not surprising. And without, compromising your secrecy, R&D secrecy, but how do you see AI and LLMs in particular in the future? Because that's your job, really, right? So not only in banking, but in general, how do you see that being applied? With your creative mind, I'm very curious to know what you see.
So I think that we've only seen the tip of the iceberg. I think this will progress into something far more superior than we are experiencing now. And I think these things will make them as components into other things. So we will have like autonomous machines that can interact with you as a human, and have like a language center in their processor and stuff like that. So you can like give them commands and you can talk to them. Maybe they will even replace certain kind of positions and jobs, such as in hospitality and things like that. And I think that we will also see a bunch of much more crazy stuff on the horizon, because once you combine these LLMs and you combine the generative image and video things, I think we will see realities that appear to be real and reality, and it will be hard to differentiate for humans what is actually real or not.
Is that scary to you?
It's both scary and intriguing, because on one side is like the Turing test, right? If you can actually pass that, then that's really cool. It's a technological marvel. But what if this enables people to just live in some kind of virtual world inside, basically like in the Matrix, and not be able to differentiate between fantasy and reality? That can be really scary.
My point of view is that it really doesn't matter, because if you feel the reality that is indistinguishable from real reality, then why does it matter? Anyway,
Yeah, or maybe we're just making the next level of simulation.
Exactly. That's exactly where I was going. Oh, you saw me coming. That's awesome. Okay. And so, AI is definitely going to improve, and we're going to see, more crazy stuff. Do you see that like in the short term, or do you see that happening? Like, do you see that, exponential growth of importance of AI in our world, or is it just still far away?
No. It's
tomorrow.
It's almost tomorrow. There's so much crazy stuff in the AI scene going on as we speak. During my training of retraining AIs to do naughty stuff, I discovered this whole ecosystem of people training specific AIs to do really specific things, and often horrible things. Like things that generate pornography and stuff. There's actually models that people are trained to generate certain kinds of nipples, certain kinds of pubic
Maybe we'll cut that from the final video.
Yeah, but imagine somebody has then sat at home, labeled images.
That is, yes.
That takes a certain type of individual.
Yes. Okay, maybe one last question on AI before we move on. But so again, you have a very creative mind. When you see AIs like Midjourney or stuff like that creates images, right? They're only just mixing existing images. But
to a certain degree.
With your background and with your knowledge, intimate knowledge of AI, is that creativity? Does AI as creativity? Or will it grow to have it? Real creativity? Yeah. Will it write a resume on an egg?
Maybe. So, but think about, how do you train your creativity? How do you train your brain to draw? How do you train? You do it by mimicking other people's stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
Always?
Yeah. You start by drawing circles. When you study art, you study by copying ancient paintings. You study art, you study comic books, you study the things you want to draw, the styles you want to draw. And by doing so, you develop sort of your own style. And that's also what these generative AIs do. So they don't generate exact copies of images. They're kind of like
what is that? But what about people that do create like a different style of painting, a different movement, a different, or not even painting, a different type of art, Demoscene, like...
Yeah, but again, you're still just standing on the shoulders of the people before you. Still, it's not real.
I guess you're right.
Yeah.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
That is really, that's a conversation you could go on for ages.
I can talk about that age.
All right, guys, that was Jean-Thirion from SW and Espen. Thanks for listening to us. And if you like the video, just drop a comment below. See you next time.